Hi, everyone, and welcome to our second RAM Connect webinar session. My name is Jamie, and I'm part of the tech team here at RAM Tracking. And today, we're going to be talking about private mileage. So, we'll have a chat about what private mileage is and why it matters to you and your business. And then I'll talk you through a live demonstration of the RAM platform so you can see how technology helps solve these problems in real time. But first of all, what exactly is private mileage? Essentially, private mileage refers to any non business use of a company vehicle. Now, that includes things like running to the shops, picking the kids up from school, weekend use, or even letting other family members use the vehicle. When these journeys aren't recorded or are misclassified, businesses face increased fuel costs, unnecessary wear and tear, and a higher risk of running into tax or compliance issues. This is a problem that more often than not goes unnoticed until the fleet manager has an expensive problem on their hands. So, getting ahead of the curve is a great string to your bow. Now, private mileage has lots of financial and operational impacts on a fleet, even when the usage just seems small. So, first of all, you have the obvious increase of fuel consumption. To give you a quick idea of how small amounts of private use add up, let's say a driver, on average, uses a vehicle privately for just 15 minutes a day. Now, assuming they're going around 30 miles an hour on average, over the course of the year, that adds up to 2,700 miles. Now, if you take into account real world fuel costs and fuel efficiencies, that small amount of private use per day is costing your business over £550 per year. And that's per individual vehicle as well. And remember, that's also not taking into account the additional wear and tear on your vehicles. Your tires, your brakes, your service intervals, all of that's going to shorten your asset's lifespan. But your biggest issue is compliance. Incorrect tax reporting for the HMRC in UK, the CRA in Canada, or the IRS in the United States can cause all kinds of problems for your business. In all of these regions, private use affects your tax reporting, and businesses need to correctly report their personal mileage. Now, different regions handle the penalties differently, but the principle is the same everywhere. If private usage isn't properly recorded, the business is exposed. Here in the UK, the HMRC can issue very heavy fines, up to £34,000 per vehicle, if mileage can't be evidenced accurately. In Canada, the CRA issues tax reassessments and penalties when a taxable benefit for a vehicle is reported incorrectly. And in the United States, the IRS require personal use to be recorded and treated as a taxable fringe benefit income. If it's not, businesses can face payroll tax penalties. So, across all regions, if mileage logs are incomplete or missing, authorities will usually assume the trips were private, even if they are company vehicles. That is going to massively increase your tax liability. So, how does tracking help solve this problem? Well, essentially, tracking is taking away the guesswork. Every journey is automatically captured with a time, location, and distance. So you're not relying on guesswork or memory or paper logs of when a vehicle went out. Additionally, you can define your business hours to isolate private journeys in your tracking data. And the system is going to generate clean, audit friendly reports for the tax body in your region so that they can be submitted. You can also set up out of hours alerts where are going to help you spot potential misuse of the vehicles early. And overall, it reduces the admin that's needed and helps improve the accountability across your fleet. Tracking isn't just about knowing where your vehicles are, it's about protecting your business from unnecessary cost and compliance risk. So, now we've covered the background and the risks and the issues that private usage can cause for you. So, let's have a look at how all of this works in the RAM system. If I just move over to the platform up here, let's start by looking about how we define private mileage. Now, the simplest approach is to set some blanket business hours, which you can go to the small face icon up here and you can go into your account settings. Now, straight away, we can see the business hours section. So we can define the standard working window for the organization. So, like we have set here, 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., but only on Monday to Friday. Any journeys that take place outside of these hours is automatically going to be flagged as potential private use. Now, this is brilliant for businesses that operate very predictable working patterns and just want a quick way to enforce consistent rules across their fleet. Once I've set these hours, they take effect immediately across the account. So every asset is going to inherit the rule and it will reflect in your private reporting and your alerts. Now, we do also understand that not every fleet is uniform. Some drivers might start earlier, some might work late, some might be on call or have a bit more of a flexible schedule. So, for those cases, we can override the blanket hours on a vehicle by vehicle basis. So, if I go into the asset list and I just go to edit a specific vehicle, and if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll find the custom working hours toggle here. So here, now that I've toggled these on, this driver is allowed to use the vehicle from 7:30 until 4, Monday to Friday, and on the Saturday, but they're still not allowed to use the vehicle on the Sunday. So you can set completely different hours for your individual asset, and they might need just a little bit of tweaking to help match your fleet. Now, these customized hours take priority over the blanket rule in your settings. And again, any movement outside of these hours will count as private use for reporting purposes. This flexibility makes it really easy to adapt RAM to the exact nature of your business. Now, once your business hours have been defined, whether universally or by the asset, RAM begins to automatically categorize your journeys. So, to review your private journeys, we just go over to the report section, and here you will find the private report. And that is going to just show every journey that occurred outside the standard business hours. So, if I just run one here for this vehicle, so the report is going to list off what this vehicle considers to be private journeys. Then it's going to show us every time the ignition was turned on or off outside of the business hours, along with a location, distance traveled, and driving time. And we're also at the bottom going to have an overall breakdown of the vehicle's activity outside of business hours. You can also run a financial version of this report, which will actually take into account the fuel costs per mile which you have set in your asset information to help give you a ballpark figure of how much these private journeys are costing your business. So if I just load one up here for the same vehicle, you can see that now the report has added in private usage cost of 50 pence per mile, and it's calculating up how much each journey and each day is costing us in those private journeys. Now, lastly, for the demo portion of today, you can also look at real time monitoring with alerts. So, let's say maybe you've had drivers who have maybe misbehaved a little bit before, or maybe you've even got really high value assets that you need to keep a closer eye on. We can set up instant alerts to be notified if the vehicle moves outside of hours based on those defined business hours. So, if I go into alerts and event alerts, let's go ahead and create an alert for private mileage started. Now, private mileage started will pull its active hours directly from the asset information, so you don't actually need to edit anything here. And then you just need to choose which users of your system are going to receive that notification, and then which asset you're concerned with. So, now, if Joe Bloggs moves his vehicle outside of hours, we are going to get an email immediately telling us that the vehicle has been used. Now, this is incredibly useful for tackling problem drivers, preventing that misuse, or even just spotting issues before they begin to escalate. So, that is everything for the demo portion of today. But as always, I've been sent over some questions by our customers, which I'm going to run through now. So I'm just going to have a quick look at these. How often should we run private usage reports? You can actually schedule in reports on our system. I'll show you that now. So if I go back to the RAM side and I go into reports, I can have a scheduled vehicle report. So if I go scheduled vehicle report, let's say we can have a private mileage report. Now, most businesses I work with tend to run these weekly. Some do run them monthly. I would say that running them a bit more frequently is your safer bet. That way, you're going to be able to pick up on issues before they start to get out of hand. So, if I was setting it up for weekly, I would have it come through on a Monday. I would have it cover the previous 7 days. So, it's going to give me a report about last Monday to Sunday. And then I just choose which vehicles I'm concerned with and who the recipient is going to be. But yeah, generally, I would say schedule these in for weekly is probably your best bet on these ones. Brilliant. Let's just go back to this page here. Um, do drivers need to install anything or track anything themselves? Outside of the tracker actually going into the vehicle, no. The driver doesn't need to click a switch or press a button or anything to say, I'm now doing a private journey. Because we do things by the business hours system, it really takes the responsibility away from the drivers and everything is just going to automatically run in the background. Great. How quickly do we know if a vehicle moves outside of hours? If you set an alert. If you set an alert, it'll come through immediately. The alert system notifies you as soon as the vehicle moves outside of the private mileage hours. So it's really, really good for monitoring those high risk or problematic drivers. Um, Last one here. How do we approach conversations with drivers about private mileage? Yeah, that's an excellent question. And to be honest, if you're in a fleet manager position, I know it can feel really scary to try and have that conversation with a driver. I think the best approach is just to keep the conversation focused on compliance rather than blame. Most drivers really are not intentionally misusing the vehicles. You will see if a driver is deliberately misusing a vehicle rather than it being a few minutes per day. We're going to be talking several hours per day. Um, but most drivers don't really actually understand what is and isn't allowed as far as company vehicles sometimes, or the tax implications of private use. So I would start by explaining your business hours policy and why the reporting helps protect the business. It actually protects the driver as well. At least here in the UK, the HMRC penalties impact both the business and the driver themselves. So if the private use isn't accurately reported, that can lead to benefit in kind issues. And those additional tax liabilities fall on the driver themselves quite a lot of the time. So having those accurate logs just helps protect them just as much as it does help protect the organization. It's not about you saying you're not allowed to do this. It is saying we need to be careful for these reasons. But that's everything I've been sent over today. We've taken a look at what private mileage is, why it matters, the hidden costs and the compliance risks it creates for your fleet. But the main message is that private mileage isn't just a fuel issue. It's a tax issue and it's a compliance issue and ultimately it's a cost control issue. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that this session's given you some good insight into how to manage private mileage more confidently with your vehicles. And if you have any further questions or any help configuring the features we've looked at today, please feel free to reach out to our team. We are always happy to help you. Thank you again, and I'll see